Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizer to invite me to present also this year in this beautiful conference. So today I will share a practical use case about AI in automation, and I will do it sharing the result that we had currently in 2024 from an European project. So a project founded by the European Union with the European Training Foundation. European Training Foundation is an European agency based in Italy, in Turin, that has the scope to, let me to say, to develop, to increase the use of new technology, digital technology, to improve education, in particular, not inside the European countries, but on the boundaries. So we work with them. I'm from Ledcast, that is an international company, and we are partnering with European Training Foundation to develop the workforce in countries like Ukraine, Georgia, in North Africa, in Palestine, and so on. So the intuition that the European Trade Foundation had in 2023 when we started the project was to try to use AI to automatize the research, because what they do is to write a lot of policy to suggest the next skill, next occupation for the future, and of course they need to do it in country where the access to official data, official library is not so easy. So what they asked us, it was to use AI to try to improve the velocity, to improve, let me to say, the productivity of bio researcher. And of course, the intuition was to use generative AI to automatize the research, the query in this big data library. And of course, when we started, so remember, 2023, ChatGPT was released in Europe, I think, in November 2022, and they had the intuition to use AI in research in 2023. So you will see some models that currently are obsolete, but the result of this project are from 2024, okay? But when we started, of course, we started to look what was possible and what was not possible about AI in research. Because, of course, the debate, the discussion, I think is also an actual discussion. If you look around in Google, in internet, in the research community, you will have a lot of this type of researcher, this type of news, this type of academic result where AI is used to write article. I think I read something a couple of weeks ago that a researcher wrote something like 700 paper in 2 months. Okay, that is maybe difficult if you do it alone. And of course, the issue was also about the intellectual property. I will show you something in few slides, but not only, because of course, when we started in 2023, there was ChatGPT launched a few months before, and we study how to use AI with researcher. Researcher are not a very easy community to use, where use AI and where try to introduce automation. And the intuition was to start from the definition of artificial intelligence. Okay, the definition was also adopted by the European Commission in 2024 with the AI Act, and the idea was to create a digital tool that was able to automatize something, not everything, because of course the idea was to leave the researcher to decide what is the research question, what are the paper to use and not to use, to address the research. And I love this definition. We started from here because, as you can see, we have the machine-based. Okay, so it's something, what we created is something machine-based with some degree of autonomy. So it is not full automated, but help the researcher to go ahead very fast with the research automation. And the second, we study also what include and what not include. This chart is coming from AI World, that is a public website. You can look at it. And as you can see, currently AI research is quite diffused around the world. We have a main hub in Beijing, in Boston, in Paris, if we watch the different continent, in Sydney. But of course, it's something that is really spread around the world. And of course, if we watch nowadays the model, I repeat, in the slide where I will present practically the tool, you will see models that currently are maybe here, okay? But it was a prototype that we implemented in 2024. As you can see, currently we have access to a lot of open source model, to a lot of legacy model, and to create automation, it's not so difficult nowadays. Also because a lot of people around the world, with this Microsoft AI Diffusion Index, I took this chart a few days ago, so it's updated, and the Microsoft AI Diffusion Index measure the work task automation inside the employee, inside the industry. As you can see, AI is quite used everywhere. Okay, so starting from this free consideration, so create a machine-based tool with some degree of autonomy, access to a lot of public model, open source model and the legacy model, and so no limitation about the introduction of automation tool inside an enterprise, inside an institution. We started to design the tool. And of course, the idea was coming from this paper of 2015. So where artificial intelligence was only for AI engineer, for machine learning engineer, and so on. And as you can see, this research estimated that with AI tools, it's possible to reduce the workload of researcher at least of 30%. Okay? And this was the intuition of the European Training Foundation, because we started to create the prototype with the idea to facilitate the extensive literature exploration, to try to automatize and create a tool that was able to serve different subjects from labor market, for economics, computer science, policy, and so on. And was able to scrape data in real time from different big data library. So the result is a mix of different technology to try to emulate the work of the researcher. Let me to go more in detail. So in my previous slide, I shared that a lot of news, research, and so on are a little worried about the use of AI in the research. But as you can see, it's not something new. We started to use, I'm also a lecturer in university in Italy, and we started to use AI and automation not in the last 2 years, starting with ChatGPT, but with different models, starting from keyword extraction, using machine learning technique, using a graph-based approach. We are using AI in research since last 40 years, okay? So maybe more, okay? But at least the last 40 years, we are using digital libraries, we are using NLP techniques, we are using information retrieval to try to go more fast to produce our paper, to produce our policy, to produce our document. So it's something not new. Second, what we did, it was to create an approach about this literature review assistant, okay? And we started with the classical information retrieval approach. The idea was to start from the query of the research, to add some sample, to try to help the AI tool to create the final document, to refine the query of the researcher with some automation, and arrive to the final result. Okay, this is the idea that we had in 2023 when we shared the approach with the European Training Foundation, and we arrived to this final tool. So what we did, it was to ask to different researchers, to different policymakers, to different economists, how they are doing research now. And we used this main paper of 2019 to arrive to the final approach, to the final workflow. And as you can see, the AI virtual assistant is not working on everything. It is specialized from the search strategy to the writing phase. Okay, so we leave to the researcher the first phase, so the definition of the research question, the definition of the goal, and we leave to the researcher the final topic, so the quality assessment about the final result. So what we did, it was to assist the researcher in the critical phase, in the more expensive phase from an effort point of view about the research. First of all, the access to the database, big data library like Scopus, like DBLP, and a lot of different library, the retrieval of the paper, the PDF, the summarization of the PDF, and the selection of the more important, more relevant papers, okay? So, with our approach, we are able to more or less read I can say read and summarize 800 different relevant documents about the research question in few minutes. And this is the increase about the productivity. And the researcher can go ahead or before and refine the research question, refine the keywords, and it can move from the start to the end in this workflow. And this is one paper published this year that emphasizes also this approach, because as you can see, with a different model, in our prototype, we are more or less here. So the model that we'll share, that we use are more or less GPT-4 and this kind of families. But here, as you can see, we can do really more using more advanced model published in the last couple of years. And what we started also to observe are the limitation in the research, the research definition using large language model and the foundation model, that are more or less related to the hallucination, to the access to new papers published, to access to real-time data, to try to serve different types of topics, also where the access to data are limited. If you think about what I shared before, the European Training Foundation is not have a focus to write policy about the European Union. It's about countries like Morocco, Tunisia, Kenya, Egypt, Palestine, where the access to the data in some cases is really difficult. Okay, so starting from this limitation, we define the main pillar of the tool, where we have the sources and the database, the literature review process, and the foundation model used in the different phase of the research literature review. About the sources, we define for the tool different family. Okay, we started from the official one that maybe in some cases require a subscription, and this is one of the issues, the intellectual property. So these kind of sources are like Scopus, JSTOR, PublishMed, are specific in some case of or research domain. We have the peer review sources, okay, that are really popular. And we have all the GRI literature that we can use to write paper. That could be news from internet, that could be policy from World Bank, OECD, from different institutions, and also working paper coming from different research community. Okay, so all of these resources can be used to write new article and new paper. And what we did, it was to create a different adapter that in real time scrape information from a bunch of different sources. That was one of the intuition. So not store the data, but download in real time the data using scraping techniques. In the tool, we implemented this list of sources that are mainly European Union sources, that are mainly public available sources, to avoid the limitation about intellectual property. So it was technically possible also to download the data from private sources like Elsevier, like Web of Science, like EBSCOP, like Scopus. So it was possible to do everything, because you know better than me, using scraping or using API, currently it's possible to access to all these different big data library. But for an intellectual property reason, we were in 2024 not clear if it's possible to scrape data and use AI to summarize their papers. So we stopped this source for, let me to say, a political reason, not from a technical point of view, because I repeat, it was possible also to write adapter and connector for these different sources. The second main pillar was the large language model used in the research review process. And we tested a different model. I repeat, it was 2024, so June 2024. So we didn't have the access to the last GPT that we have now, to the last Gemini, to the last open source model. So we tested everything, because the goal, it was to arrive to the best model for each single phase. So we didn't use one single model, okay, inside the tool. We selected the best model for the keyword extraction. We selected the best model for the summarization. We selected the best model for the writing of the paper, because of course different model has different capability. Then what we arrived at, we needed also to mix model from a different company, from different research academy from AI. But it was a decision of VTF to choose not a different company as a partner about the foundation model, but one unique company. So we did to use one single company with different model. And what we did, it was to test different, let me to say, company with a set of different model, with a different number of parameter, different hallucination degree, so different temperature, different key. So, and what we did, it was to use this approach to ask to the different model coming from different company, using different size, with different number of parameters. We used this approach to select the best model for each single phase. So we started from different topic: circular economy, impact of AI, blue economy evolution, and advanced manufacturing in a particular country. We asked to the different model the same research question, and we asked to the model to summarize the main keywords to retrieve article and papers. And after the keywords research, we asked to the model to write the final review. At the end, we had different paper produced by the model for different subject, and we asked to experts coming from the European Training Foundation, coming from World Bank, coming from UNESCO, to let me to say, rates the different article to arrive to the best model and to the best approach. And we selected at the end the OpenAI family only because we had this constraint to use one single provider, okay? Because as you can see from this matrix, we have some good results not only from OpenAI models but also from Anthropic. For example, the Anthropic family model from Claude were really good for the final writing, but the OpenAI model wins on the keywords and the summarization. So we needed to choose one single provider, and we chose OpenAI, also because the second constraint that we had, it was to stay on Microsoft Azure, and 2024 was really more easy for us to integrate the OpenAI models. And finally, we created the tool. So my engineers to create the tool followed the information retrieval approach. So starting from a query, they started from a user's task, they try to improve the query from the researcher. We used a search engine to collect in real time the data from the different sources, to prepare the result, to refine the query, researching the collection, re-prepare the result, and follow this loop automatically. So the methodology that we adopted was the RAG methodology. So I will not go in detail because I think you know very well what it is nowadays. But of course, the intuition was not to use one single approach, but to mix a different approach, starting from the user input, using an AI module to improve the research, and then starting the loop. So repeat, query in real-time the data, refine the keywords, requery, refine the keywords, and so on. And this is the automation. This is the final components of the tool. We have a front end, and I will show you the front end in the next slide, that help the researcher to access to the system and run the research question and iterate the different phase. We have a backend in Python that exposes the API and permit to the research front end to iterate the research, refine the query, refine the keywords, extract the final document, PDF, and so on. And then we have the AI module. The AI module is composed by three main units. The natural language unit that is able to select the relevant keywords for the research and query the different sources. The different sources are organized in connectors, so we can enable 1, 2, 3 connectors depending by the licensing that the institution has access. We have the information retrieval management that has the scope to retrieve the PDF from the different connectors, parse the result, clean, select the keywords, the abstract, and so on. And then we have the knowledge graph that is this tool, that is a knowledge graph plus or lore adapter. The lore adapter, it's only to refine the final writing, to give to the final paper, let me to say, a more academic language. Okay, this is the only adaptation that we did here. And let me to go in detail about the front end, and then I will stop myself. So, of course, in 2023, 2024, the ChatGPT interface was really famous. But what we did, it was to understand the best front end for the researcher. And we selected different experiments, and we arrived to create something that was really good to improve the productivity, but also really good for the exploratory phase. Okay, so the final tool is composed by 4 main screens that permit to refine the research, refine the keywords, review the references, and write. So 4 different screens where the user can go ahead or go before. So let me to go in detail. These are 4 screenshots about the final tool. And then if you're interested, I can share a video about the tool because it's a private tool on Azure. So in the final tool, only research with an accreditation of European Training Foundation can access. Okay, due limitation about the licensing. The first step is a screen. So it's a web tool where the researcher can write the research question, select the country of interest if they need, select the period, start here and here, select the sources, so they can remove and play with the different sources, and the document types, so they can use only peer review documents or articles or literature, they can add and remove. As you can see, we have the next button because every time they can go ahead on the return before to review what we are doing. The idea it was not to emulate the ChatGPT interface, but to create a tool to improve the productivity of the researcher. On each click, we have the integration with the engine that, let me to say, trigger the different model, GPT-4 Mini, GPT-4, 2024, different model to arrive to the keyword extraction. What means that in every single click, we retrieve 10, 20, 30 papers from the sources, and we refine the keywords based on the research question. And every time the user can integrate new keywords if they think that they need new keywords to improve the research, or can go before and rewrite the query. Okay, so it's possible to go ahead, repeat, and go before. And when the keywords are okay, they can go ahead with the reference definition. Here we have the first instruction about the paper. As you can see, the tool selected 77 relevant paper for this research question, but only 23 are really relevant. So here we have another model that select the best paper according to the research definition and propose what are the 23, let me to say, more good model according to the parameter. Of course, the user can add a new reference if they are not present. They can go before, review the keywords, go ahead. They can mark a different paper. So we leave to the researcher the autonomy to improve the final paper. And at the end, we arrive to the final paper. Here they can integrate some part if they need. They can download in Word, PDF. They can download the bibliography reference if you need to integrate with Overleaf, for example. And as you can see, starting from 800, 900 different paper, we arrive to 77. Every time the researcher can go ahead and go before. And at the end, we arrive to more or less 20 papers selected for this literature review and a document of about 40, 45 different pages, which is the final result. So, some limitation, then I will stop myself. When we presented the tool in 2024 to the ETF, we had these 4 main limitations shared with the research community. Technical, about the cost, because the tool was inside the European Training Foundation, and more or less it cost from 20 to 30 euro by research. That could be few, could be a few, could be a lot. I will let you the comments. technical and financial, and then organizational and social cultural limitation. Because of course, what we did, it was something that can go really fast, okay, to create article, to create papers. And one of the issues was to explain to the researcher why they need to adopt them. And one example that we used, it was this one. In 2000, I was present, we started to use Google to write article, okay, because it was really good. And currently, I think we need to improve our way to do research with AI because we can go really more fast. I will stop on myself, and if you have any question, I'm here.